Welcome to RoofTalk, a production of the National Roofing Contractors Association. I am your host, Crystal Ribble, and this podcast is produced by Told You So Media. This podcast informs you on the trends and happenings within our industry. And today, I am joined by a panel to discuss how we provide career pathways within our industry and how we train our teams to build loyalty. So, welcome to the podcast, Chris Bowman, who is president of Collins Roofing, and Pat Kurth, who is the national lead mobile trainer for Elevate Commercial Roofing Systems. Welcome, guys.
Hi, good afternoon.
So I want to start the conversation by just talking kind of an overarching theme of the way that roofing has been viewed. Hasn't always been positive, but have you seen throughout your experiences that the perception of roofing has changed over time? The perception of having a career in roofing, has that changed over time?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think especially lately, it's really eye-opening when I go to IRE or any of the conventions, Western states, to see kind of the interest from various different talent levels. You've got a lot of post-salesmen who come into the industry and kind of felt that, roofing is a good career path, either through solar channels. You're seeing a lot more women in roofing. Obviously, we have the National Women in Roofing Council, and we're seeing a lot of professionals that are leaving their old trades and coming into roofing because they're seeing that there's a lot of opportunity here. So I would say absolutely. I started in the industry almost 20 years ago, and I'll be honest, it's probably the cliche thing to say. Everybody was embarrassed to say that they were a roofer. And, I got into the business through family. It's a generational thing. And when I was in college, coming out of college, my buddies kind of were questioning, what are you doing? How is that your career path? And so I set out at that time to try to change the perception of roofing. It was one of my goals to have roofers be seen as true professionals. Something I learned from Sesame Street when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you do, you can be a garbage man, and if you're the best at it, you can be successful. And that's really the attitude that I tried to bring into this industry.
Sure. What are some ways that you try to bolster that or to help support that within your company?
Well, I do believe in education. My uncle, who's the founder of the company, that was one of his biggest things was education. And, one of the things I personally did was the FEI course. I graduated in class 7, so 2014 to 2017. And that was one of the best things to this day that I could attribute to the trajectory of our business here in Utah into my personal career path. So I own the business now. I purchased it in 23 from my uncle, and FEI was a huge step in the preparation of that. So education not only for me, but I just had my first employee graduate, Troy Ennis. He just graduated in the most recent class. And then we believe strongly in engaging in the NRCA foreman trainings. We do a boot camp here internally every year with our entire company. It's a full day of technical, hands-on training, business training, help them see an overall view of the company, not even just from the craft standpoint, but to see it from the internal workings, the finances, the projections of sales, because we want our men to really understand the whys.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. What are some opinions about how manufacturers and contractors can work together to combat the workforce shortages that we see?
From a manufacturer's standpoint, it's important that, we step in and help our contractors, the ones that are doing our products, to ensure that that their guys are being taught properly on how to do our materials, not just doing our materials right, but it's going to help them overall with no matter who the manufacturer are that they happen to be using on that particular project. So that's why we've created, we'd had for many, many years, we'd had an in-house program out of Indianapolis, but then we decided to reach a bigger audience, we needed to be spread out more across the country to get in front of more people. So that's what we try to focus on is individual contractors, distributor trainings, or large events, as Chris had said earlier, the IRE, IBEC events, stuff like that. And
Sure.
It just helps, we're helping them get better and they're buying our products. So it goes hand in hand with each other.
Right. Yeah.
I think I'm sorry, Crystal, but I think the manufacturers play a critical part, especially since there isn't really a formal or there hasn't been a formal training program for roofing. It's not like you go through like an electrician or a plumber, which is obviously one of the reasons for the Pro Cert push, or the the educational systems that we're implementing at Clemson and some of these universities. It's so critical that the men understand how and why, so that they can progress and become, from a laborer to an entry journeyman to a right-hand man to a foreman, and then ultimately the career path would naturally lead them into estimation or sales. The best estimators are those who know how to put a roof on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and all of those initiatives are helping push the education of what this industry can do for you to younger generations. And so, what have you seen each of your companies do to attract younger talent? Like, how are you focusing on that?
One of the things that I'm doing, I got involved. So our roots of my company is wrestling. I know my uncle was a wrestler, and he was said, if you want to be a better wrestler, come roof in the summer, stay in shape. So one of the things that I've done here locally, Utah Valley University has just kind of got put on the map with some really great talent. We had a transfer from Penn State, Terrell Barraclaw, last year, and I got involved on a local level to be a sponsor of them, and had some opportunities to speak to those young men. A lot of them are coming to college as athletes, and this isn't just wrestling in specific, but a lot of college athletes come to college not quite sure what they're going to do from an academics perspective, because their focus has been athletics. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is provide a contractor pool of sponsors, not just roofing, but across all blue collar, to give these guys a perspective to have, what our options may be in the crafts, provide internships in the summers, and so try to invoke some energy. Blue collar is not really, I think, where most people go to college and say, I'm going to go graduate from university and then go join blue collar workforce. But I can only speak for myself, but Pat, you probably would agree. Some of the most successful, qualified, educated, and best people that I've ever met are through my industry.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to be part of the roofing system, and I wouldn't change my career path for anything. So somehow energize that younger base to even make it an option is important. So university is one way, and then the other thing is getting involved in these academic programs that we're implementing with these high schools. We haven't really done it here in Utah yet, but it's one of the next things that we want to do, to get into some of these technical training courses and get some of these kids out of high school who want to start doing apprenticeships.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm involved. I do a Detroit public school where we go in with the juniors and seniors from various public schools throughout the Detroit area, and try to let them know about the career and what it's like, and what their possibilities are as far as moving up, and their pay scale. But that's all union there in the Detroit area. I also do a girls camp in Cleveland, Ohio, where I work with. It's a girls construction camp where I'm working with junior high girls, and it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the different stories that I've heard about some of the girls they're raised in a contracting family of some sort. So they know how to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're really inspired by their parents. And so it's really cool to see younger girls getting involved too and seeing the possibility.
From must-have manuals to the latest releases, these are the greatest hits in roofing expertise. NRCA's technical library brings together the most trusted guides for quality roof system design, inspection, maintenance, and repair. Covering low-slope membrane systems to metal wall panels to asphalt shingle repairs and more, NRCA members can download these resources free. Add these instant classics to your roofing library at nrca.net/shop/technical and press play on smarter roofing decisions.
Okay, so part of the education process is that when you're trying to get younger talent, you want to educate them on the trajectory that they can have in roofing, that it's not that you start on the roof and that's where you end up retiring. There's so many things that you can do if you choose to. So are there any inspiring stories that you can think about of someone within your company that kind of moved up the ladder in a way and kind of made a lot out of their career within your company?
Yeah, in my company, probably more internal growth. Like we've moved up inside the organization, but I would say broadly speaking, before I kind of dive into some of my specific employees, some of the growth trajectories could be that you become a good roofer, you become a technical master, and then you have opportunities with with Elevate, with Carlisle, with Johns Manville, with GAF. You have opportunities to go be a technical inspector or a trainer or a sales associate. So I think you can splinter off depending on what your interests and skills are, and go anywhere you want. And you can lead, you can use the actual craft itself as the springboard, or internally, which is where I probably have more familiarity, is like my own men, coming through as a young laborer, maybe not even speaking English, learning English, or learning how to communicate, speaking fluently and effectively, and then learning leadership skills and tools, and going from the field to, now my director of field operations was one of my field employees, and he's one of the greatest assets that I have. And he brings a level of empathy because of his understanding of what the men are going through in the field, but he's also had insight from the office to now carry this message where he's able to translate. There tends to be in our industry maybe an adversarial relationship between the office side of work and the field. Maybe there is a disconnect there where people don't truly understand that we're on each other's side and we're on the same team. And so for me, being able to integrate that perspective from both sides, it is translated into a much smoother and overall symmetrical company, to where the people in the field see the support staff here in the office, the estimators, the warehouse managers, they see them as their teammates and not someone who doesn't work as hard as them. So to me, it's so critical to connect those dots. And then I make it very clear when guys start, I actually provide a pay scale. So I don't want to be in charge of giving anybody a raise. I don't want there to be, oh, you've been with me this long, and so you're just going to perpetually get some sort of increase. I want the control to be in their hands. So a couple of years ago, I had a surgery and I was away from the office, and it was a winter time, and I had a couple guys who decided they wanted to quit, and I went to them and said, what's going on? And they said, well, we feel like the workflow may be slowing down, and we also just don't think we've gotten the proper raises. And I said, well, what have you done? Show me what you've done. Your foreman should have been informing me on some of their progress. And it was at that point that I made a decision that I'll never, ever leave it in my hands. I'll never let the men decide to say, well, Chris didn't just proactively give us a wage increase. I want them to have 100% control. I want them to see the beginning to the end and what it takes, the steps to get to, if they want to be a foreman someday, here's the skills that you need to learn. But along with those skills, you're going to get a pay increase. So you're going to be in control of your own destiny. You're going to be able to make the wages you want to make and get the leadership roles that you want to get. And if you don't want to be a leader, the pay scale will show you where you can optimize and maximize your earning potential within the field. So that's something for me, helping people see the end from the beginning is critical, because nobody sets out to say, I want to be a laborer for the rest of my life. I've never heard anybody tell me that.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to, I want them to progress and become more valuable. And I tell them my hands are tied. The more value you get, the more valuable you are to the company. I can't help but increase your wages. So it's like you control your destiny.
Yeah. I love that. I love the idea of setting that up from the beginning for them, so that they don't just wonder if there's a path upward or surmise that there's something else in the future. You kind of lay it out for them that there is something in the future and this is the path to it. What are you doing and which path are you choosing, sort of thing. So
And generalized timelines too.
Yeah.
They can choose to excel in the craft faster than, I can't tell you, oh, you need to be a laborer for 5 years. Well, if you can progress in 6 months, in a year, the sky's the limit. You can increase and grow as quickly as you want to. And I think that empowers them to feel like, okay, this isn't just a job, it's a career.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. I mean, they need, it helps if you're hungry. My personal story is pretty interesting, and I don't want to dive too deep into it, but I'm 3 generations of roofing in my family. I was the first person in my family in 52 years to graduate from high school. First one to ever go to college. And I dropped out after my sophomore year because all my friends had went to work where my father was working, and they would come up and see me on the weekends, and new trucks, and hey, we got an apartment. And I'm like, well, this college, I don't need this. So I dropped out my sophomore year, went into roofing, and then it didn't take long, getting yelled at a few times, and I was like, is this what it's going to be the rest of my life? I mean, here I am in my early 20s, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, it just seemed miserable at the time. But as you had said earlier, Chris, I just took it upon myself to try to learn, and I preach this during my training, especially when I go to union trainings, that I've been where you guys have been. This is my story, from coming from a family that had nobody graduate from high school in over, half a century, to here I am. I started out as a laborer, and now look at today. I'm a national trainer for a major roofing manufacturer. So
Awesome.
it is possible. And I went back to school, and I finally graduated at the age of 57 here a couple of years ago. So
Good for you.
eventually I kept building on, my future, and I'm pretty much done now, though. I don't have any more
That's
goals
awesome.
as far as getting more educated. I'm actually trying to get out of roofing, not get deeper into it.
Well, that is a good example, though, Pat, that there's never, like, there's not an end to this. You don't have to say, I'm too old for this, or I can't go back and do that. Like, you can always accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. It doesn't matter how old you are. Um,
Chris is right,
what,
though. I mean, if you're hungry and you want to change what's going on in your life, you need to make those changes. And if you're willing to be open-minded and listen and learn, especially from somebody like Chris, who seems real successful, your possibilities are unlimited.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, Pat. The interesting thing with my story was I was in college and had zero interest or desire to be in the roofing industry. Had an impression to talk to my uncle seriously about a job, kind of laughed at myself when I had that impression. And I actually went backwards. I was making more money in what I was doing at the time, even going to school. But one of the things that my uncle did was he laid out where I could be, what the future could look like. Chris, with your skills or, with what I believe that you could bring to this industry and the vision that I've never been able to accomplish because I'm just a roofer who made roofing my business, you can be a businessman who makes roofing his business. And I took a step back, had to rent my house, sell my car, got a Nokia phone covered in tar. All my nice clothes, all my nice jeans were ruined within the first 6 months. Best thing that ever happened to me, though, because it helped me, one, become hungry, stay humble and hungry, right? Two, what my uncle had done to project where I could be really gave me that purpose. Like, look, I'm going to school, I'm getting educated, but at the end of the day, I didn't know what that was going to look like when I landed. What was a psychology degree going to do for me, from a financial perspective? I didn't know. Maybe I could have been the best psychologist and done something great. I have no idea. But what I did know is what my uncle laid out to me. And so when I set the course and I jumped into the industry, I just completely submersed myself, made it 100% all in, and just learn, and knew that nothing could stop me. There was never going to be a ceiling. And I've gone further, and I've had a blessed life in so many ways, more than I could have ever imagined. And I attribute it 100% to the industry, the humility, the attitude, just the overall demeanor of the mentors and the people who have been in the industry who recognize that hard work provides blessings, but also calculated risks. I've learned through the hard times and become more of a seasoned, well-rounded person and have that humility, but also that pride of doing a good job. I drive down the road. I'm sure you'll laugh. Pat, you probably do the same thing. I tell my kids all the time, see that over there? My guys put that on. And they said, I know, Dad, you told us 6 times already. I said, yeah, but I'm just proud.
Yeah.
It's just every time I see it, it invokes that level of, it's like getting paid twice.
I do the same thing with my wife. She doesn't want to go anywhere with me.
Yeah.
You've already told me, like you said, you've been telling me that same story for 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's true, and there's not many things that give you that level of satisfaction. I have young boys, and they just cooked a dinner the other night. They were taught how to make a turkey, and my neighbors had them serve us. And at the end of the day, my boys, they're 11 and 8, they said, man, Dad, I want to do that again. I said, doesn't it feel great to do something with your hands and provide somebody with something you built? And I said, see, guys, that's why I tell you that every time we drive by those roofs that you tell me I've said 6 to 7, 10 times that I did it. It's because it invokes that same feeling that you just had. And that's, I think, what's missing in today's society is like everybody wants, especially young kids, they want what their parents have without understanding what it took to get there. But they're cheating themselves out of the pride and just that internal level of like satisfaction of building something, building their career, and being a part of building things that are honorable. I say roofing is one of the most honorable professions. Everybody needs a roof. It's a basic need.
Yeah.
And if you can do it honorably, sky's the limit. I mean, you want to talk about a recession-proof, endless pool of business opportunities. Look out the window. Look out the window of the airplane when you fly over. Pat, you probably do that with me, the same as me. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all that, millions and millions of square feet. Every time I fly into a city, opportunity, it's big opportunity. Just like my uncle said when he spelled tar, that's smell money. And to this day, every time I smell hot tar, that's what comes to mind.
That's amazing. Yeah, my 15-year-old, oftentimes we're talking to him about his ability to control how he views something, his success of something, we're like, we can point you in a certain direction and we can give you all of these ideas and all these things, but you are in control of your destiny. And I think for people to know that, like, you're in control of this, and in this industry in particular, anywhere you want to go, you can go. But you have to do the hard work and you have to dive in and do it and grab that possibility and run, So I think that's a good reminder.
Yeah, so I was just mentoring a guy who graduated from UVU, and he came in and I painted the picture kind of like what my uncle did, and wrote out this plan, and I said, and I can't cheat you out of the hard work that it's going to take to be where you want to be. There is no shortcut. I can help you do it faster, but there's no way around it. And I said, believe me if you want, or think I'm just blowing smoke, but I promise you that the hard work and the days that you wake up and say, I hate what I'm doing, are going to pay off 10 years from now. And that is something, if I could tell youth today, is that stick with anything long enough, endure through the hard things, you'll come out ahead at the end. Don't jump around and skip around and try to seek the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You got to create that pot of gold. And the rainbow's all around you. The opportunities are boundless, especially in roofing. I can't speak high enough of what it is that I do, but I think the ability for us to earn and make and do it in a way that I can honestly say, I see a customer on the street or the grocery store, I can go give them a hug and I have a relationship with them and know that I provided a good, valuable asset to their life and their business.
Yeah, you're 100% correct, Chris. I've known a lot of people over my time that had all the potential in the world, was moving right up the chain, were hard workers, and then he just got a little complacent, maybe missed a day or two of work, or who knows, and then nothing, Here they were making good money, got a place to live, bought a vehicle, were really moving, you could see that they wanted to, but then, I don't know, they bumped their head or something one morning, and it just all fell apart. And I'd see them years later, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're still jumping from job to job. It's like, man, where you could have been today if you would have just stuck. You'd had you had a good foundation to go off of. You'd already went through a lot of trials and tribulations. They'd been there for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And then
Right. I had an employee come back to my office back in May, and I just did a big major remodel. We built a really nice facility, and it's a really great place to be, in my opinion. Came back to visit me because I sponsored his daughter's softball team, and he came to bring me a basket of treats, with his daughter. And when he got here, I could see the tears welling in his eyes because he recognized the regret that he had for leaving the company and the opportunities, because he jumped ship for maybe, what he thought was greener pastures. And he's in a position now where he's still floundering and trying to find where he's at. And it was really moving to me to see that, it kind of reinforced that mentality of like, if you just stick with things, even when it's hard, you stick with things. Passion comes from the Latin word passios, which means suffering and endurance. You have to be able to choose something that you're passionate about, which means that you're willing to suffer for it. And the end game for me was providing for my family, providing my livelihood, and with the satisfaction I got through building people, building roofs, building a business, interacting with my community was a payment that I wasn't expecting. And so now my greatest joy, I tell my wife, I don't get up anymore for myself. I don't get out of bed in the morning for me anymore. I get up every morning because I have hundreds of people every day who rely on my ability to get out of bed every morning. And it's not work. I do it with a smile on my face because I love to see my men come in. We have a company function. I see them wearing a new pair of Jordans or having their kids dressed nice for school. When they tell me that they got a new car or they're able to buy their first home. I mean, I get emotional. It makes me think this is what it's all about. Yeah. Whoever says that running a good business isn't charity is wrong. You can be selflessly selfish in building something for you, but ultimately, if your success is the byproduct of making those around you successful, you've won. And you're building and you're giving people purpose and perspective and blessings, and you're being blessed in return. And at the end of the day, everybody wins. And so that's roofing has been such a blessing in my life. And again, just everybody I meet, Pat, I don't know you, Pat, but I could tell that if we got together, we'd hang out and we'd have a great time, even though you're from Michigan and I'm from Ohio originally. But
you started talking about wrestling, and I'm like, wow, me and you and Crystal should hang out. I was talking to her, and I was like, we got a lot of similarities and a lot of the same interests.
Yeah, just good people.
I enjoyed wrestling as well. I was a wrestler in high school, so
there you go. I think
I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree in this industry.
That's right. But that work ethic, that grind, that ability to, go through hard things alone, but also build as a team is what, that wrestling mentality is all about.
Yeah.
So.
I love this. The conversation just shifting to perspective, and this perspective that you have within the industry and how that helps you be successful. What, to kind of cap this portion of it off, like, if there's somebody listening to this, if there's a contractor listening to this that is struggling to develop talent and they're running into a lot of different roadblocks and things like that, what is some advice that you can give or things that you would say to them about bringing people into their company and developing that talent, creating a culture where people want to stay and grow?
First off, I'd say you're not alone. First, being a business owner is one of the loneliest places in the world to be. There's not a lot of people that understand what you're going through every day. So first thing I would tell contractors, you're not alone. And the struggles that you have are real. They're not made up. And when you want to attract talent, don't be frustrated that 99 out of the 100 people aren't going to qualify to be the right one. It's okay to wait for the right one, because the wrong one does more damage by trying to expedite the process. Like we were talking about earlier, like if you try to cheat the system and say, I'm going to get somebody and hand off my responsibilities to them, no, you got to build. You got to train, you got to put in the time, you got to put in the work, but it really takes the right person. So I would say be patient to find the right person. You can't teach hard work, ethics, and morals, but you can teach roofing. So you don't need to go find somebody who's got 20 years history in the roofing industry. As a matter of fact, I'd say the opposite. They may bring bad habits into your business. So go find someone who's a blank slate, but has the morals, the principles, the values that align with who you are and what it is that you're promoting, and then teach them and provide them every resource that you possibly can. Get them networked into the NRCA and your local association. Get them plugged into as many peer groups as possible. One of the keys to success that I've had is the ability to make peers in my industry. Every conference I've ever been to, whether it's a manufacturer summit, whether it's a IRE, a local association, pick brains. You know why? Because they're not my competition, and we're all willing to share. I said, if I bring back one piece of advice from anything I do, and I'm able to implement in my business, just one piece every time, I'm going to make a major difference. In over 20 years, and how many hundreds of conferences, that's hundreds and hundreds of pieces of change that have helped build my business. Absolutely. And so get networked. Don't feel alone. Don't get discouraged. Find some peers, get connected yourself, and then be patient. Wait for the right one.
Yeah. You're right. It takes time to build a good team. I mean, you can compare it to sports. You're going to draft new people every year. They might be a fit. They might be a failure. But over time, you keep building and building and building, and eventually that train will be on the rails and it'll be running on its own, hopefully.
And that's right. The momentum is what builds. So if you get the right person, then the next right person, then the next, then you're going to get more right people wanting to come quicker. And that's where you see that chart growth, that exponential growth start to kick in, where your organization may have felt stale for a while, but once you finally get it dialed, the sky's the limit and you take off. And it'll happen sooner than you realize if you're just still putting your head down and working every day.
Yes, and it really comes with family or friends. I get in it. Like I was in it through my father and a bunch of my friends, and then they brought their little brothers, and next thing you know, you got two or three super crews. Because these guys all have the same work ethic, the same desires and same goals that my friend had or my cousin had.
Yeah, and I always say when you create a place that people can reach their potential, you're going to attract the right people. So, kind of going back to the first question of like, what was the perception of roofing, back in the day? Well, the perception of roofing was you show up, you wait outside with dirty, broken down trucks, everybody's dirty, you got tar covered shovels and handles, and, there is nothing clean and nice about it. Well, over the years, I've invested in nicer vehicles. I've invested in a nice office. I've invested in nice gear. All my men wear, I provide them with gear twice a year to make sure that they look uniform and they're clean and they have nice things to wear and they can take pride in what they do. Branding is just as important. And then, when you create a brand and you create the ability to be the top, I say, how much room is there at the top? At the top of a pyramid, how much room is there? There's only room for one. I'm not saying that I'm the best, but that's what I strive to be. Because if there's only room at the top for one company, if somebody has to make a choice, well, who are they going to choose? The hope would be that they choose you because that'd be the best place for them to land. So create a place where people want to land. Create a place where they know that you're the forging the path, and you're providing opportunities that are better than anybody else. I don't do a lot of things right, but there's a few things that I think I've done well, and that's creating a culture that my men could be proud of, and that has attracted their friends. If they want somebody to join the industry, they want to bring them on board, and creating an office where my staff, my estimators feel comfortable bringing their clients to hold meetings here instead of going to their building. Those are important things, and then that word gets out, hey, this is a really comfortable, great place to work and a great place to be, and this is, the plan that we can have. The sky's the limit. I tell everybody, I can't hold you back. I'm bound by your work ethic. The harder you work, the more value you have, and the more valuable you become to the company.
Did you mention earlier, Chris, too, that you have company functions and stuff, like Christmas parties or maybe summer parties?
Yeah. Well, occasionally, we do a boot camp every year, which is also coupled with like a nice, meal. We'll do, occasionally I'll rent like a suite at a sports game or something like that, or we'll do an event here at the yard, or we'll do, just a barbecue, but, or I'll personally go out and, have lunch for the guys and meet them on the job site.
I think I mentioned it because it really struck home with me when you mentioned that, I love working at a place where you're taken care of. If you're not taking care of the guys in some facet, eventually they're going to either leave or they're going to be robbing you blind. But I worked at a place where we'd have a summer party for all the family, the kids, and they'd have events and prizes for the kids and a Christmas party. They might rent a couple Greyhounds and take everybody to go see Detroit Tigers game. That means a lot to people, more than I think people realize. You just feel you're like, hey man, this guy's really taking care of me. He's looking out for my family, my kids, and it makes you want to be there, and it makes you want to work even harder for him. You feel appreciated, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and appreciation actually psychologically goes further than a paycheck.
Yeah.
And so, obviously we do this to make a living, but appreciation is something that I have to remind myself to do. In business, we tend to focus on where it's negative because that's where you grow, right? Like what's going wrong so we can fix it. And what we do is we undermine the 90% of the things that are going right that people deserve the credit for. And that appreciation helps build them even further and to have confidence and make better choices. But, the other thing, Pat, that I was going to say is, one thing I've tried to do every year is help make sure that the partner at home, the wife, the husband, whoever it may be, who's not here in our company, is given appreciation for the time and the sacrifice that they make to support their significant other who's out here doing work for us.
Yeah.
And so I try to, whether it be get them like a sweater or coat or something that's designated to them, or do a gift. It is important, and I always try to tell my men to thank your spouse for the sacrifices that I know that they make so that you can do the job that you do.
And it definitely goes a long way. Coming that I came from, being in roofing, and it means a lot, to feel appreciated. Like I said, I don't mean to keep pounding it, but it means more than most people realize.
Yeah, I would say don't chase the dollar, let the dollar chase you.
Yeah.
So I had advice to a young entrepreneur, a young business owner. It's like, don't chase the dollar, let the dollar chase you. The dollar will come when you do the right thing. Build people, build a good product, try to be the best at what you do, and build a brand,
Yeah, gosh, so true. So the foundation of so much of this, the longevity of someone being in your company, being in our industry in general, really hinges on how much they're invested in. Like you said, not just being appreciated and all of those things, like it goes so much further. But a part of this is the training that we give them and the time that we spend investing in their skills. And so, Pat, I want to talk to you a little bit about what Elevate does and what's the overall approach to some of the training that you do?
Well, we have a lot of online classes that we offer, but we started this mobile training program here several years ago, and we're building on that. We're getting more trainers that are similar to me. They're more regional. We're also bringing in various tech reps throughout the country and creating a position for them that's kind of called a hybrid, where they can help out, because we're really trying to focus and put a lot of effort towards training the guys, helping them, making their guys better. So that's become a big focus here in the last few years. And as Chris knows, as time has went on, these products just keep getting better, faster, more customer friendly. So, it's important that we get on the forefront of teaching these guys how to use these more advanced products. Like, we have membranes now where you don't have to put hot asphalt down or use glue to glue it. There's self-adhering membranes, and the equipment they're coming out with now is making it a lot faster for guys. But they have to be open-minded. First thing, like Chris was saying something earlier, I was going to say, bring them to me young or open-minded. They'll be easier to mold that way, and maybe help them and give them some pointers. Where you get older guys that maybe been around, you always hear well, I've been doing this since you were in diapers. It's a little harder to maybe get into their brain, but I try to let them know that, hey, even though I've been doing this for over 43 years, I didn't invent it. I didn't invent anything. Everything I've learned from people like Chris or you, Crystal, where you've taught me things. And I do that when I approach my trainings. I tell them right up front, listen, I don't care that I started in 1983 chemically bonding PVC sheets together. It doesn't mean anything. I've learned things from you just as much as you're going to hopefully learn from me today. And that's the approach I take. And then with the older guys, maybe they'll be a little bit more open-minded to wanting to hear what I have to say. That's the
Sure.
approach I take.
So, I mean, obviously, as technological advancements happen, things are changing. You're teaching people how to do maybe not something new, but to do it in a new way with new materials, things like that. What are some of the large challenges that you see contractors have in these training sessions? Like, how do they overcome some of the challenges that they may have when they're training with you?
Well, first thing I do is when I used to go to trainings or any speaking engagements when I was younger, and this is a good example. I've known people when I first started at Firestone, they would like do a PowerPoint or get into a presentation and spend an hour about how Harvey Firestone got into the rubber business. And most roofing contractors, especially the guys out in the field, they don't want to spend an hour listening about that. They want to get right into the nuts and bolts of what's going to make their job faster, better, and making money and saving money. So a lot of times, like say if I was going to come into Chris's office and do one, we would speak ahead of time. And I would find out, hey, Chris, what do you guys want to focus on? What are your weaknesses? he could say, well, Pat, listen, we really need to focus on drains and scuppers, or we need to focus on drains and flashing curbs or pipes. And this is what I'd like to talk about. And that's what I base and mold my training around is my contractors' needs, what they need, not what I think they might want to hear, but what they want to hear. And I do not want to waste your time. And I let them know right up front as soon as I just did one this morning for like 45 people. Stood right in front of them, explained who I was, told them it didn't mean anything. I was hoping that they actually would teach me some things so that when I go to my next training, I can steal some of their ideas. So, but that's the one thing
Yeah,
that's basically how I approach it.
sure. So obviously you're training people, like you'll train people that have been in the industry as long as you have on things, but then
Yeah.
you're also training young people. Do you have to adapt your training at all
Yes.
for the age?
Yes. This industry, as Chris had mentioned several times, it's come a long ways. And these products, although they seem like they're really advanced, are really pretty simple to do if you're taught right off the get-go. And that's what we hope to do, elevate our company is just get them off on the right foot, help them to build a good foundation, and, give them good pointers. I explained to them, listen, I travel all over the country, and I learn tons of stuff from people just like you and me. And I try to take that and implement that into my next training process. I'm always looking for a better way. And I'll tell them, listen, this is how I'm going to show you how to do something. Say, for instance, field fabricate a pipe, or, field wrap a pipe, a PVC pipe with unsupported membrane. I'm going to show you what I've learned over my 43 years. If someone's got an opinion, please speak up. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I'm not trying to debate or argue. I want to learn because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. All of us sharing information and trying to make everybody's lives better.
Sure. Well, and there's a difference sometimes in how different generations would approach the learning process, right? I mean, would you say that younger generations want more guidance and like step-by-step things than the older generations do when you're training them?
Yeah, I would say they do. I think maybe they have a little bit of difficulty on which way to lean to go.
Sure.
A lot of times when they're on the crew, they're not going to go to an older guy that's more experienced because they don't want to get yelled at or get back to doing what you're doing. And I experienced that myself. I remember starting out as a garbage picker upper or go get this or a gopher, and remember crying to my dad. These guys are making $10, $15 more than I am, and I'm working twice as hard as they are, and all they're doing is sitting there on their butts with a heat gun, and it took them an hour to flash a pipe, which today you can flash a pipe in 5 minutes with the products that we have. And he used to tell me, listen, we're not going to pay you to learn on the project. So he would say, and my dad was a boss at the company where I worked, and he would say, tell the foreman, tell him that that I said it was okay for you to take a heat gun home. You get some scrap out of the trash pile, and you practice for a while, and then we'll touch back on this a month or so down the road, and then we'll turn you loose. And that's how I got better, by practicing on my time and not on their time. Because it's expensive to teach somebody and then have to fix their mess ups
Sure.
on a
Yeah.
job that you're trying to put a nice roof on for somebody.
So, Pat, what would be just a little bit of a pitch that you would give for a contractor that's listening that might need some help with training? What would you say to them? What would be some encouragement to use services like what Elevate has?
Yeah, they more than likely want to reach out to their local sales firm. I mean, we have independent sales reps all over the country, or maybe go to their local distributor. A lot of times, like the ones that I'm doing this week, 3 of them are done at distribution houses. So they have advertising up when they're in there, explaining this is what's happening, this is the date, these are the topics. Because, like I said earlier, we've already pre-discussed what our topics are going to be going into it. What do you feel that these contractors' needs are? But again, when I get in there, I tell them, listen, I've got an agenda here, but that doesn't mean that we can't sidetrack. I mean, I have no problem with being interrupted If I'm talking about something and all of a sudden something pops up in your head that you've been wondering about for 20 years, let's jump on it. We will jump around in the conversation. And hopefully more people will engage in the conversation. And that just keeps the line of communication open. And it's awesome. Especially when you get a lot of people that normally wouldn't want to talk if they give their opinion. And I tell them too, man, thank you so much. It's nice to hear somebody else's voice in a training session other than myself.
Yeah. I
It's
think,
nice to have a voice too.
yeah, it's so true. It's, this industry is so giving in so many ways, not just in financially and all of those different things, but also just in the knowledge that people want to share. And when you destigmatize the fear of asking a question or any of those things, there's a world of things that can open up for you. And so I appreciate your perspective on that, especially since you're in the trenches of that every single day.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I didn't ask about this topic that either of you would want to say, or any closing words that you have?
From a contractor perspective, creating a culture of learning is important. My men know that if they don't know the whys, they'll forget the hows. It's easy to teach somebody how to do something, but if they can't think of the reasons why, my uncle used to always tell me, think like water. And if you can actually start to think and use your brain in a way that thinks through the process, then the learning of all the new technologies becomes easier because you understand why. You understand why this is going to work, why this is going to be effective. And so, creating a culture of, like you said, Crystal, breaking the stigma of like, it's not okay to ask a question. The older I get, the more I tell people my strength, my vulnerability is my greatest strength. I'm smart enough to know I don't know everything. And if I can just surround myself with people who do, then I'll be just fine. And so if I can get my ego and put it to the side, I'm going to open the door and open the pathway to more success. And that's something I try to transfer to my men. It's like, look, there is no dumb question, because if you're asking questions, that means your brain's working.
That's right.
And I need your brain to work so that you can progress. And I'm sure Pat loves that. Like when Pat gets a question, that it's, their brain is, you can see it in their head. You can see their brain churning. And then hopefully in some of these sessions, you've got their peers say, oh, I've got an idea, I've got a thought. And then it becomes this like domino effect of people opening their mind and expanding their ability to think about things. So
yeah, that's what I was saying. When I get on a topic, and if I get somebody, it will snowball where all of a sudden you get, everybody's got an opinion, and they'll all chime in. And I love that. I love getting sidetracked or getting interrupted and kind of going off here into left field and kind of getting away from the subject matter that we were talking about, because I can reel that back in. I've done it long enough where I'll remember where we left off and we can bring it back. But it is cool to kind of go down some other rabbit holes, and it brings up more topics and more discussions. And then I do that when I do those trainings. I'm like, listen, again, anything that comes across your mind, let's get it out there. Let's air it out amongst other professionals like ourselves. And like you said, there is no such thing as a dumb question. And I tell them, hey, don't be like me in college. I was embarrassed to raise my hand to ask questions in my math class, and therefore I failed math, and therefore I ended up dropping out of school because I didn't ask questions. And now that I've gotten a little bit older, who cares? I mean, we should all be adults here. No one should be laughing if you have a question. And I love the dumb questions. No matter how dumb it seems to somebody, I love it because it opens the dialogue and gets more people involved, and it gives that person some encouragement to want to ask more questions. They're not embarrassed if their question's answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and by you asking a question, you don't know who else also needs the answer to that and is not asking it. So if you speak up and you get your answer, then it helps someone else get an answer too.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Well, I love this. Thank you guys so much for your perspective and for all that you're doing in your own individual companies, but for the industry as a whole. I know I am very appreciative of it, and NRCA is as well. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you, Crystal. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope this episode gave you some insight and inspiration for the retention of a valuable workforce. Join us next time for another conversation on Roof Talk.
This podcast is produced by Told You So Media.
Told you so!